Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I am Mark Hoffmeyer.
And I am Jay Kluwer, and this week we are joined by, once again, we have two guests from the Movies and Tea podcast. We have Kim Lowe and Elwood Jones.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, guys. So, Mark, what are we talking about this week?
All right, so this week we're talking about Chapter 7, Surprises, or Paraiso Rico, Just Because, which is basically Paradise, Just Because. It's a scene where they talk a lot of expository dialogue. It's the night before the test. Everyone's just kind of getting ready for the big day, which is going to be the testing of the genetically modified sharks. Now, before we get into it, guys, I got to ask you a question. So we're not far into this movie, and there's been 4 dance scenes already in this film. So we have the teenagers in the beginning, and then we have the dancing on the boat, and then we have Ada Turturro's dancing in the tower, Brenda Kern's dancing, and then we have the dancing. So 4 dancings, the dancing at this party, in the tower, on the boat, and on the other boat. How would you rank them?
I think Michael Rapport's dancing alone in the scene is something to really behold. When you watch the deleted scenes, you see they're doing all the dancing without music in the scene, but I've never seen a man look like a corpse that's being shot with electricity to get it to move. His bottom half of him seems to be doing something completely different to his top half. And you've never seen someone look so uncomfortable trying to dance on film as you have when you look at how Scroggins is moving at this party.
They call that the Skogs.
That has to be intentional, because they call it out. In the deleted scene, at least, they call it out that he's got some unexplained dancing tragedy in his past that makes him terrible at dancing.
So, Kim, what's your favorite dance of these 4? Who do you think who's the best? What's your favorite of the 4 dance scenes?
I don't know. I like I always think the Brenda and the tower dancing is always really fun. She's such a bubbly character.
Yeah, it's just pure. The dancing in this movie, sans Scoggins, it's just happy dancing.
Scoggins is trying to be happy, but I think he's just lamenting that it's a pretty empty dance floor, and maybe he feels obliged. I still love the dancing of all the extras heading off to leave the skeleton crew, but just because I feel like all of those background artists were told on the day, okay, dance, pretend there's music, dance, and there clearly was nothing, and they're just kind of doing a little shoulder shimmy boogie. But there's like 20 people pretending to dance. That's still my favorite.
I can't get over what you said. So do you guys think Scoggins in a full dance floor packed with people will be busting out moves? Is he just dancing oddly because it's an empty dance floor on the Aquatica?
I think Scroggins is the sort of person that if he gets about 4 or 5 drinks in him, the more he drinks, the better a dancer he is.
Or at least the better dancer he thinks he is.
Yes, exactly. So in his head, he's the greatest dancer, but certainly not from the example we see here. And he's kind of like a real angry grump at a party, I have to say. It's sort of like, because in the deleted scene, he argues with Preacher over the quality of his cake, which really it's a really bizarre scene because it goes completely in the face of the conversation that Samuel Jackson's character has with him that we see in the film, where he's like complimenting him on the food.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's paid off in a later deleted scene, which we'll talk about in a week or two, where Scoggins is fed the cake for breakfast again. So it's kind of it's a setup and payoff kind of thing.
There's also another scene. The kitchen fight used to be 7 minutes longer. And what happened was there's still half a bottom of the cake left. And Preacher smashes it on the shark's head. And the shark can't see for a while because it's just got a big cake on its head.
Does Preacher tell the shark, like, smell it? It smells funny, right? And the shark gets really close to it and just smushes it in his face.
It's like Three Stooges. I mean, he just Three Stooges the shark. And the shark's like, the cake, it's terrible.
Scoggins was right.
There's a whole scene where Preacher's like, how did you know? Like, what? You're speaking English to me. And how do you know Scoggins? Were you listening?
I almost don't want to burn you in my oven. I want to document this.
And then he rode the shark for a while. But then the other shark saw it. And then that's when the fight scene kicked back in and he blew it up.
Yeah. So welcome to the show, guys.
Sorry, it's just when you mentioned about hitting him with the shark with the cake, I just wanted the shark to go belly up, and it's like, I guess Scroggins was right.
Yeah.
This is a pretty crappy cake.
So I have a question. Where do you think I love a good cake bit in a movie that's not about cake at all. Like, it's not a birthday movie. It's just random cake. So I started thinking about other cake moments. I started thinking about Milton in Office Space, where he doesn't get any cake.
Oh, yeah.
Bill Murray shoves the cake in his mouth in Groundhog Day. The harvest cake from Drag Me to Hell, where she sees the eye in it. That always gets me.
I want to say Addams Family Values, where Lurch bakes the cake and he forgets to take the girl out.
Oh, that's a good one.
And there's Kristen Wiig spends hours making this little cupcake in Bridesmaids.
And then the raccoons eat that cake later on, too.
Yeah, different cake, but yes.
Do you guys think that could strudel be considered a cake?
I think strudel's more of a pastry, more of a dessert than a cake.
Got it. Because Hans Landa's Christoph Waltz strudel eating Glorious Bastards.
A tonne de la crème.
That's A+ eating acting.
Anytime he's with pudding, though, his acting's always like info better. You look at the Incarnage, you mentioned obviously in Inglourious Bastards. Like every time he's like with pudding, this is why when he was in that James Bond film, which I can't remember now because I've lost it out of my memory, where he's Spectre, no pudding. He can't be threatening without pudding. If when they had the big boardroom sequence, I mean, you keep him in shadow, but just have some sort of pudding in front of him, and he would have been like so much better. Waltz, the sack's better with pudding.
That's how they introduce his character in that meeting. You just hear him putting his spoon back into an empty glass.
Exactly. You don't have to have him eat it. I mean, he just, whenever he's with Sean with pudding, I don't know what it is about Christoph Waltz and pudding. He just seems to play off dessert really well, and it's the most strangest thing.
Wow. He's a Brad Pitt fan. And I just have two more for y'all. Marie Antoinette, she's eating cake, which I love the irony.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just food porn, though. Marie Antoinette is.
Oh, I love it. And then Mrs. Doubtfire when he smashes his face in the cake.
Yeah.
Yep. That's another deleted scene in Deep Blue Sea. Scoggins does that.
He's just mocking Preacher. I'm not going to eat the cake, but I'll decorate my face with it. What about Matilda? What about Bruce Bogtrotter's big chocolate cake in Matilda?
Oh, that's painful.
Yeah.
I hate that moment. That movie crushed me when I was a kid.
Oh, I loved it. I was very jealous.
I just watched it last week, so.
Oh, nice.
How was it?
I guess as an adult, it's a little bit different. I don't know. I think it's fun. I think in a child perspective, this is fun. But then, I don't know. I feel like it's so over the top in some moments that you're just like, what? What? Why is it? What?
You have to remember, though, that Roald Dahl hated kids.
Understandable.
This is why his books are so dark. This is why kids have meet horrible fates, and they're all disgusting in their own unique ways. And as I said, this was just Dahl's self-therapy. He was just projecting his hatred of kids into these movies. This is why they're constantly subject to things like the trench ball, launching them from fire like the hammer toss and stuff.
I think I'm realizing why I enjoy Roald Dahl stories so much. He and I have we agree on kids.
What do you guys think Scoggins was like as a kid?
He's probably like the kid in Matilda who eats the chocolate cake.
Wow.
He was always the fat kid who's determined to get popularity. I mean, I'm still not sure what his role is on the station other than just press buttons and
he's the engineer.
give away stupid ones.
The most important person there. He's the most important person on Aquatica.
Yeah, he knows the structure of the entire facility.
It's his job to raise the fences.
That's a big job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to know how tall they are and what they're made of.
Kind of phoned it in with the top half, though, didn't he?
He's not the shark expert. As far as he knows, the sharks can't jump over that. We know that they can. But, yeah.
They can clear that thing.
They could easily clear that thing. They can jump double the height.
I don't know if y'all noticed this, but in our second or third episode, the guy who did these sharks, so the guy who did it was Walt Conti. He worked on Anaconda. He did Free Willy. He did all the animatronics and Bait. He worked on Shark Night. And there's many scenes in this moment that we're talking about now at night when they're shooting where you can just see the sharks swimming around in the background. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just Walt Conti going, I am going to drive these things every moment of when I'm on set because this is amazing. I don't know if you caught all the sharks swimming around in the background. Even when they didn't have to.
Yeah, of course.
The sharks are always a presence there, even though it's not required for the scene. You're constantly reminded the sharks are there, which is a really, really great because normally in other filmmakers they tend to just if they're not going to use the sharks for any particular action, it's all they're underwater somewhere. But here we get that shuttle, the fin going around on the track, which I think is just a really nice subtle shot. And it sort of adds to the tension really as well when she sort of walks out because it's also perfect dark. There's not the usual blue filter over this shot at all. It's just perfect dark. So when the doors open up, you've got this square of light from the elevator and she walks out. And even though the shark's in the tank, it's not going anywhere. It adds that sort of tension to the scene, whether it's going to pop up or something. There's a real sort of subliminalness of just the shark being there. And you get the dorsal thing going around. It just sort of adds to the tension, even though it's not actually going to play a part in the sequence.
Wow. What if the shark called her up to the top and mimicked Ada Turturro's voice?
It mimicked Brenda.
Yeah. What do y'all think?
How would it get into the tower?
It could do it. catapult, lever.
I'm not saying it couldn't. I'm just intrigued as to how you're suggesting it did.
Well, on the other guys, didn't you say it would develop like a kelp breathing apparatus and then come up on land? So it developed a kelp breathing apparatus, went up to her office, watched some radar, drank coffee, and then called McAllister.
Yep, I can see it now. That must be how it's done. We've already established the sharks can speak English, so why not be able to mimic half the sharks of the film as well? Why not? It's in league with the parrot. That's how it learned to speak.
The problem with Brenda's character, though, is every time I see her on screen, I just keep checking to see if she's got that tacky Rolling Stones tattoo that she has in Sopranos.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if that was actually her tattoo or something they added for her character on The Sopranos. So every time she's on the screen, I'm just too distracted checking if she had that awful tattoo or not. Because she annoyed the hell out of me on The Sopranos. And I think this is like the one time that she didn't like annoy me totally, so...
Hey, that's good.
Yeah.
They should have had a fight with her in the radar tower with the shark and the kelp apparatus. But like a Sopranos fight remember when Tony kills Joey Pants, how ugly that fight is? They should have a similar one in the radar tower.
A 300-pound shark.
Yeah, it seems like a fair fight.
I sensed you trying to wrap your head around that visual right there, and it made me happy.
I'm just trying to think, because obviously a shark hasn't got a huge amount of range. It's like, asking a T-Rex to clap its hands, really, when you think it's not like it can throw a punch or something. They're all top-heavy sharks, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Especially out of the water, yeah.
It couldn't work.
Especially with that kelp breathing apparatus.
Yeah.
That's
it would have to be some tail work.
Okay, So that's this scene. What actually happens in this scene? So it actually starts out like a real horror scene when Susan is called up to the surface and she just appears. And the fact that she's been called up there, you kind of know it's leading you down a false path of it's too much of a horror scene to actually play out. Like she's going to be attacked and killed at this moment. But she comes out, pitch black darkness, and then a couple of flares go off and it's a big surprise party. So... Was anyone taken in by that the first time they watched it, or did everyone expect?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I don't know, back in '99, I wasn't looking at films with the same analytical mind that you clearly were, Jay. It's sort of like I wasn't thinking much. He's gone up to the surface for whatever reason, and then suddenly these flares are going up, and it's like, what the hell's going on? I mean, has Hans Gruber and his terrorists come to take over the facility, or... there could be any number of things. I probably wasn't going down the same way Mark was with, like, kelp breathing apparatus, but... It was certainly surprising.
So this is the Die Hard 2 that Rennie Harlin really wanted to make, not the one that he did make.
I mean, it makes sense. An opposing pharmaceutical pays mercenaries to go get the research. Things go wrong. They get stranded. And then it's mercenaries and scientists battling sharks.
Oh, hell yeah.
So it Deep Rising.
Yeah. With a giant creature that got into that cruise ship somehow, and then its tentacles can stretch for 100 yards in the air. And there's jet skis. I hate jet skis. Can't do it.
Deep Rising's a movie I always wanted a sequel for, but, obviously never got, so.
I mean, they got that island.
I know, exactly. It ends on such a tantalizing note as well.
And Treat Williams, man, his performance was I was going to say a treat, but I'll say a delight.
It's real Williams.
I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there is some pretty cool camera work in here. So when Janice and Jim are kind of talking about they're not breaking the
Harvard Genetic Compact.
Yeah, the Harvard Genetic Compact. They're working really fast, 5 times its brain size. The camera's looking up at Sam Jackson, kind of putting him in power, and then it's kind of looking down on Jim and Janice, but they're looking up at him. But then when Jim goes, it will work, it's just flat on his face, so it gives him a little bit more power right there. So they knew what they were doing with these shots. I mean, it kind of establishes a power kind of setup, so when he delivers that line, it hits more effectively when he's like, it will work, which I kind of love. So, I mean, it showed that they thought this out and storyboarded it.
Yeah. And Jim has a line I've never noticed before during that bit where he says, sharks are the oldest creatures on the planet from a time when the world was just flesh and teeth. And Jesus Christ, Jim. That is, he's fallen back into a Bergman film doing that. That's just flesh and teeth. And the way he delivers it, he's the best actor in this film, Stellan Skarsgård. I'm not going to take any debate on that from any of you.
What?
I always like Stellan Skarsgård is like the most, like one of the most underrated actors. Like we don't give him enough credit, and he's in so many things.
Oh, yeah.
He's everything he's in, he makes a little bit better. I think he's one of those phenomenal character actors.
Well, in the commentary,